Hey everybody, welcome back to What Happened to You. Thank you to everyone who has joined the Patreon so far, and if you haven't already, head on over to patreon.com/Sebastian Scales to get some bonus content and to help support the podcast. The link is in the description of this video, and I will see you there. Hey,
How's it going?
great man, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Feels like years have passed since the retreat.
Right? Man, I feel like it's just such a blessing that we met. Our dorms were like in right next to each other at the meditation retreat, and like,
Yeah,
what a happy coincidence
it was so serendipitous and just like powerful. I mean, I've done 3 meditation retreats, and it was the most powerful interactions that I've had after any of them. And I think that it really started and stemmed from your openness to share your experiences, and like everyone in the bathroom was just captivated immediately. So yeah, and which is what this podcast is all about. So I'm really grateful to have you here, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more about your story. So
It's great to be here.
Ben, what happened to you?
All right. So I guess first of all, like many things have happened to me in my life, and like some of them, like if I were to choose to tell them, like might sound more like surprising or like, oh, that must have been horrible, right? Yeah, I've like someone has like I had a voice teacher that had me like sing naked to like get over my nerves, and I like
Whoa.
airplane, I've had the person next to me, I didn't have them, they touched my genitals, and like these things have happened, but like interestingly, like those aren't the events that have like caused me emotional trauma in my life. Like it's like, oh, that was messed up, but like it wasn't, those weren't events that I've like been like super worked up over, which I don't know, like I don't know why that is.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but like other times have been worse. So like I'll get into the story that yeah, I told you at our after our meditation retreat.
Yeah.
So this was a year into COVID, like early 2021. I'd just spent a year in my bedroom, like working remotely, and like not really getting outside very much. It was like, January, and like the apartment I was in was small, and it was near a freeway, and I kept the blackout curtains closed all the time to like dampen the noise, so that like when I was in meetings, it they wouldn't hear the freeway. Like I was just like in this box, and it was really bad. I was like, well, I don't want to spend another year like this, and I'm gonna like go buy my first house. Which I think a lot of people kind of decided to do
Yeah.
at like the same time. And I had a roommate, and he was going to like pay rent to me, like once we found a place. So yeah, we went looking, and I found a place, like a townhouse in like a neighborhood near where one of my good friends lived, and it was a new build, and like you got to like choose your countertops and your floors and everything. It's kind of fun, and like
Yeah.
I was like I was like pretty sold, like I was into it, like I kind of like fell in love with this townhome that, I mean, it didn't exist yet, but like fell like, in love with the idea of it, right?
Hmm.
And then my roommate came to me, and he was like, hey, I've done a lot of thinking, and I don't think I want to live in a townhome like that. Like the bedroom that he would be in was kind of small, which like is fair. Like it was kind of small. So I was like, okay, we'll find something else that works better. Because I really, I mean, this was a good friend of mine. Still we're very good friends. I just went out to dinner with him last night. We're yeah, and so it's like
Nice.
we'll find somewhere else. so I called, actually I emailed the home builder and was like, hey, I'm gonna pull out. And like I didn't feel anything at that point, but then he called like a day later and he just asked me like, why, what happened? Why are you pulling out? And as I tried to explain to him like, I love the house, but I'm looking for something else like that will work better for my roommate. Like as I was explaining that, like I I think my body like kind of registered like, oh, you're gonna lose this place that you love.
Hmm.
Um, as I was explaining that, I felt this like electric signal. Actually, I thought it was like a rush of chemicals like go down my spine and like grab my heart and like put it in a knot and like pull it up into my throat. Um, and it was like honestly terrifying. So like I had done Vipassana meditation before, which is it really helps you become aware of the sensations in your body and like I was like acutely aware of what was going on, but like I was not equanimous with it. Like I was like scared. Later on, I discovered or I learned like I did a lot of research about like okay, what happened in that moment.
Yeah.
Turns out it was a freeze response. So like when you're in a situation where you're in danger or like one of your fundamental like the hierarchy of needs, like one of your fundamental needs is shelter. And if one of those is under threat, you go into fight or flight mode. And I think this is something that a lot of victims of trauma are familiar with.
Hmm.
Um, and if you can't fight, like if the other force is just too powerful, or if you can't run away, like if you're kind of stuck, your body actually sends a last ditch effort, which is a freeze response. And it's a little different than fight or flight. It uses the dorsal vagal nerve to like send the signal that just like shuts down your whole body. Like it's that was the first time I'd experienced that before. And like, it's like a deer in the headlight kind of a
Yeah.
feeling. Um, and it lasted a long time. Actually, that night I had a dream that I had been shot in the heart by, oh yeah, I was house shopping in this dream. And like, um, this other like salesperson was like, have you ever like started a home building project before? And I was like, yeah, I had one with this other builder. And then I just, I pulled out of it. And like, as I said that, like this gang of Californians came and they got off the train and they shot me in the heart. Uh, so I was shot in the heart and I like fell over. I didn't die. Like I was still alive. But then my mom came and like brought me home and like nursed me back to health. And like I remember just being so like grateful for her. But
Mm.
yeah, for the next like 2 months, my heart was like still in that knot. Um,
Wow.
and it was scary. I like honestly, I like you always hear like, oh, you need to eat well and exercise and sleep, and that'll help you get out of like anxiety. And like I knew I've had anxiety before and I kind of knew those things, but like I couldn't eat. I lost my appetite. I lost 10 pounds in 2 months and I couldn't exercise. Like I remember sitting down with my running shoes and like, okay, I gotta go running. But then like I would just couldn't do it. I just collapsed. I would sit there for 45 minutes just thinking like, dang, I shouldn't have pulled out of that house contract. Um, and like I looked for other houses and like we couldn't find anything and we put offers down and like couldn't yeah, it was rough. And which I think a lot of people can relate during that time.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, I couldn't sleep. Like that apartment became so that phone call happened in my bedroom and my body like associated my
Ah.
bedroom with that trauma. So like I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep in that room. Like I yeah, I would just not sleep all night.
Mm.
And I mean, some nights I would. Like I didn't go 2 months with zero sleep, but like definitely wasn't as much as I should have had.
Did you like try to sleep on your couch or in other rooms?
I did try to rearrange my room. Like I
Yeah.
moved my bed around to like make it in a different spot. Um, yeah, I did go home once to my parents' house and like slept great. And then like for
Yeah.
whatever reason I went back to my apartment and like I think there's the stigma like, oh, living with your parents isn't something a 30, what was I like 31 or something year old should do. Um and also my roommate, I had like abandoned my roommate for an internship several years previously, and like he like fell into like pretty deep depression and dropped out of school and stuff. So like
Oh,
I felt like responsible for him. Like I didn't want to like abandon him again.
this is interesting. And I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that abandonment might also be tying into the experience that you had with with bailing on the house,
right.
where it
Yeah,
almost feels like you're abandoning the broker
right.
or for me, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it was like it wasn't it was more the conversation with him, like this salesperson.
Yeah.
Like I felt like he was a friend, even though we'd only had a few interactions. And like
Yeah.
telling him no was the hard part.
This is so real, dude. I remember when I was looking for apartments in LA. I live in Venice right now, and I was looking around this area, and it was wild the sense of not pressure that was put on me by the brokers or the people that were touring the houses, but just put on myself by
Mhm.
myself to like make them feel okay. Like I
Yeah,
would just kind of like even if I didn't really like the place, I would just be like, wow, I mean, this is super nice. And I would almost go like
right.
more over the top the worse it was to try to
Yeah,
like make them feel better, even though I don't know if they weren't feeling good. It's
right.
just like the anticipate like and for me, like I think with the molestation, I developed like I had a really difficult time saying no to things, like
Mhm.
play dates or getting molested. Like there are a
Mhm.
lot of things that made me. I felt like I couldn't say no because of the ramifications associated. Before I did speak up, like I played millions of scenarios in my head of all
Yeah,
these scenarios of things that were going to go wrong if I did say no, basically. And so I'm still to this day trying to let go of the pros and cons lists that pop up whenever I have to do something like that. But what sort of struck me was what you had mentioned earlier about the singing teacher who had you sing
yeah.
naked.
Who was
And
actually a good friend of mine. And like I didn't report him because we were friends, right?
that was the exact situation I was in. I was like, this is my best friend's dad. Like, I don't know what's
Yeah,
gonna happen, but I don't really want to report this. So
right.
it's that, and then also the plane, whoever touched your genitals on the plane.
Hmm.
Both of those scenarios sort of strike me as moments that you may have felt like you couldn't say no for
Hmm.
various different reasons, either
Right.
your friends or what happened on the plane exactly?
Yeah, it was just this guy next to me who was he was from India, and I was like, "Oh, I just went to India a few years ago and did like my first meditation retreat, which we can talk about." And like I was like we just had this great conversation about India. And then like I was like trying to sleep later on the plane, and yeah, I just felt his hand on my leg, and then like it just got closer and closer to my crotch, and then he like started stroking it, and I was like, okay, like, and I moved his hand. But
Wow.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that is. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, we had just met, and then oh yeah, and then the plane landed, and he's like, "Where are you staying?" And I'm like, "Not near you."
Yeah, like, does this move work often for you? Dude, that's so wild because that's like the exact molestation experience I had where it started. What I remember so distinctly was how slow his hand would move, like
Right.
across my leg and then eventually on my dick. And it
Hmm.
was like this. it felt like inhumanely, I don't know, so slow, too slow to be a human hand. And I think
Yeah.
it might be because of like time distortion. Like I was disassociating and all this stuff that
Mhm.
just warped the whole experience. But it was just as you described it. And I felt like I dipped immediately into the freeze response
Mhm.
when that happened. And the only time that I ever actually said no or anything while he was doing it, that was like to this day one of the scariest moments of my life
Wow.
because, you're again playing with what are the, I didn't even know what was going to happen, but it just, this urge to have it stop sort of overrided my rational, like, okay, but here's all the reasons why you shouldn't say anything. And I said no, and I said, please stop. I even asked nicely. I even included
Very
please in
polite.
there. I thought maybe that'll be, maybe he'll take it easier on me if I say please. Um, but in that moment, it was such like my heart rate, it's talking about hearts, like just through the
Mhm.
roof. And it was such a freeing and terrifying moment. But
Mhm.
it was that moment of saying no that, albeit completely different situations, seems to have had a similar effect on us for, potentially different reasons or similar reasons.
Mhm.
It was a really significant no.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's scary.
Hmm. Yeah, it was like, and like he was pretending to be asleep too. Because like I looked over at first, I was like, why is there his hand on my thigh? And like he was pretending to be asleep. I was like, oh, maybe he just sleeps like that.
Yeah, yeah. Not sleepwalking, sleep molesting. Yeah.
Yeah, sleep molesting.
That'd be a pretty hilarious court defense. I
Yeah.
was asleep. I didn't know. It's pretty
Oh man.
ridiculous.
There was a person on my other side that like could have, I don't know if he saw this, but like he could have seen it. Anyway, and like I didn't want to like make a scene until I was, and never did make a scene, but I didn't want to like,
Exactly.
yeah, do
That's one of the
anything. Yeah.
ramifications. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't want, what are people going to think about this? I don't want
Yeah.
to be like, because if you say, hey, this guy's touching my dick, and he's like, no, I didn't. It's like,
Yeah.
well, fuck. Now what? We're on a plane. What do we do?
Yeah.
Like, it's a very impossible situation to be in. And I think that people who,
Especially for a kid. Like I had the advantage of being like in my late 20s. But like, yeah, for a kid, like that's just an impossible place to put someone in.
totally. And I would say too, like, sometimes regardless of your age, it's just a scenario that is in a scenario like that is something that nobody really prepares for. Like you hear about stranger danger, but you don't hear about here's what you do if somebody starts touching your dick on an airplane. There's no
Right.
training for that,
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
just thrown into this scenario
Yeah.
where
Like
it's
in
like,
hindsight, I should have done something much earlier. But like, yeah,
I feel the same way.
yeah.
For a while I had to work through that guilt in therapy and Vipassana. It's like, why
Hmm.
didn't you say something sooner? Whether
Hmm.
you're 8 or 28 or 68, you run into these scenarios, and
Hmm.
I think that it's hard to not carry guilt from how you behaved in those scenarios, even if you handled it the quote unquote optimal way in your head. You're still like
Right.
questioning, why did this happen to me? What was it, something that I did that made him, it's so easy to sort of just like turn the attention inward and make it like, oh, this is something that I did wrong, instead of
Hmm.
just being like, this just happened to me and I'm like not responsible for this at
Yeah.
all.
Like the other person is the one that is like messed up and
Totally.
they need to work through some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The singing teacher,
Hmm.
was that like a multiple time occurrence, or was that, do you
It
remember?
was probably like twice. So this was like senior year of high school.
Hmm.
It was probably like twice. And yeah, like it was never like physical contact. But yeah, it this person did end up getting like losing his job because other students complained. I never did, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Uh,
I would, that makes sense. That's like
yeah.
super illegal.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's like, okay, here's somebody who I trust, who
Hmm.
has a technique for me to get over a fear that I have.
Right.
Even though I'm probably going to have new fears that developed because of this technique. But
Yeah.
like it in those moments, you want to believe that this is not a malicious thing.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
wanted to believe that this, I remember the first time it happened, I was like, oh, cool, this because he presented it as a game. So
Hmm.
that was like what sort of
Yeah,
carried me
there's a
through for a
reason.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
playing. Come on, it's fun, right? Right, we're having fun.
Yeah.
And then
Like you think of molesters as like evil people, right? With like,
yeah, you're gonna
dark
like threaten to
clothes
kill me
and
or something. Yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's they twist it in a way that it doesn't appear to be that bad at
I
first.
know. No, it made me breakfast the next morning. But when you were experiencing that,
Hmm.
do you remember like what feelings you had or thoughts you were having at all?
Like I was definitely like nervous for sure. And the first time he was like, "Oh, you can stand behind the piano, so like I won't see anything." Um, yeah. Uh, and like, yeah, I remember thinking like, yeah, he's like a little. This is a little weird. This is a little weird.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was at the same time like yeah, we'd known each other for years, and like you know, um, yeah, he was a trusted friend, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough place. It's a tough place.
Did you sing better?
I think I did, honestly. Like I think I did. What, like maybe it was maybe it worked. I don't know.
It's funny you say this because
Mm,
I was taking a shower the other day, and it also happened on the Vipassana retreat.
mm,
Um, when I was during the molestation, we went to this cabin that he owned, and
mhm,
there was like a public pool, and I remember going to the public pool, and I got water in my ear, and I got out of the
mm.
pool, and I
And it like
started
stays
like
in your ear and you cannot
yeah,
hear.
totally.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
trying to shake it out, and this guy who I refer to as Jim,
Mhm,
he was like, "No, what you got to do is hop on the leg that you're shaking the water out of the ear of," and I did it, and it worked immediately. And
yeah.
to this day, whenever I get water in my ear, I think of him as I'm shaking
Yeah.
the water out of my ear. And fortunately, it's at a point now where I'm not like freaking out about it. But it was tough for a while there. I didn't really swim much.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
because
funny.
probably whenever you thought of that, like you probably had some like physical reactions, even like bringing you back to that trauma. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. And just any sort of memory or sensation trigger that will just put you back in. And it's intense, but
yeah,
it doesn't stay like that. The
right.
more you reflect on it, the easier it becomes. And
Right.
eventually you get to a point where now I can just shake water out of my ear and I'm like, oh,
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
that's
about that
funny.
guy.
Yeah, yeah. I think the key is to reapproach it in a safe space. Like,
Yeah.
so for me, like I tried to like, recontextualize it while I was still living in that apartment that like my body associated with that trauma, that anxiety, and like it didn't work. It just made it worse. And like I
Mm,
went to talk therapy and like it just made it worse. Like I was just like, like what why did I do why I made so many mistakes, like and like
yeah, I'm the
you
problem.
got to be in a safe space before you engage in that kind of inner work. um
Yeah. I wonder what the sort of distance of the trauma vibration, like
mm,
how far away from your bedroom is it just being in a different room?
yeah,
Or
maybe.
is it a
Yeah,
distance thing? If because you said you were rearranging your bed and stuff. So
yeah,
yeah, certainly feels like it's the room. But yeah, that's really interesting.
yeah. So like finally after 2 months of this, I was like I was worried I was gonna like lose my job. Like I was like I couldn't work very well, and like I like it was a really bad time. And so like I was like I just gotta I remembered the dream that my mom nursed me back to health. So I moved home with my parents. And like it took me 2 months to do that, but like that was the best thing for me. My dream, my like my intuition like knew right away that would help, and it did. It really did.
And the only reason to not do that would have been the stigma associated with, oh, I'm X years
mhm,
old, therefore, oh, people are gonna think this. It's all sort of so related generally. It's like people
mhm,
are going to think this about this. What are they gonna think about me? And then it's like, dude, it's like one of the most rejuvenating experiences being
mhm.
home with your
Yeah,
parents. If you come from a home that you feel safe
right.
and
Of
comfortable in,
course.
you know.
Yeah. And like, so what I learned later, like I read all sorts of books about like what had happened to me. So like The Body Keeps the Score, we've both read that one. Really helped me understand like what was going on, and that whole like the dorsal vagal nerve response, like
Mhm.
um turns out your this was the first neurotransmitter that was discovered like 100 years ago. Um, it was called Vegas stuff because the person was German. But acetylcholine is like the neurotransmitter that sends a signal, or at least initiates a signal down from like your brainstem down to your heart. And um, like I was like, okay, I gotta like understand like physiologically what was going on. And also, like as I was learning about that, I learned that like the best way to like come out of like that freeze response. I mean, there's multiple things you can do. Like deep breathing is definitely a good thing. Being in nature, like depending, like getting out of the traumatic space. But a really important one is to like just have like positive social interactions with people that care for you and love you, and you love them. And like that's something I think the whole world was lacking
Yeah.
for a good like two and a half years. And um
Plus distancing. You know,
yeah,
it's even the
like
people that you are around, it's like you're not supposed to hug or whatever.
can't
You know, it's
hug.
like this is
Yeah,
highly unnatural for humans.
right. But like yeah, just like hugging the people or animals close to you, like that can get you out of that freeze response. Like if it's a obviously you wouldn't want to like hug someone that's gonna molest you, but like hugging someone that
Can I just have a hug? Please stop. Give me a hug.
oh man. So yeah, I moved home, and like my mom, like we would play Boggle on like I spent a lot of time just on the couch. And like we'd play Boggle, and my cat would come and like purr on my chest. And oh, I love that cat. And um yeah, like slowly over time. Also, I got an SSRI, uh Zoloft. Actually it was the I didn't get the brand name, sertraline. So I got on that.
And what is that?
It's an antidepressant, but um it's also useful for anxiety.
Mhm.
So SSRI is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It increases the amount of serotonin available in your brain. Serotonin is like the happiness chemical.
Mhm.
And it can really help with like if you're stuck in like rumination about like if you just can't stop thinking about what happened.
Yeah.
um like can help you get out of that, like so especially like I've decreased the dose. I did try to get off it completely. I did get off it completely, and then like I started ruminating about like just other things like at work, and so I was like, this is. I think that this is good for me. Like maybe if I lived in nature and like lived the life of like a hunter gatherer that like didn't live in a white box all the time, like maybe I wouldn't need this. But like I think this is good for me. So I
Mhm.
do still take a small dose.
Mhm.
And but yeah, so the 2 weeks when I moved home, I took anxiety tests. I think it's like generalized anxiety disorder. There's some test with like 7 questions, and it's quick. You can take it online, and it tells you like, oh, how much anxiety. I had severe anxiety when I first moved home, and then 2 weeks later, after being on this SSRI, being with my family and like being out of that space, where the trauma had happened, I was like medium anxiety. 2 weeks after that, low anxiety. 2 weeks after that, no anxiety. And I still could like feel there was something there. Like I was like, there were moments where like, especially if I would like drive by like my old apartment, like
Mm.
I would sometimes like just feel like it wasn't resolved, but it was so much better. And I could work and I could have like I could smile. Like it was like I
Yeah.
remember my grandma at one point she was like, "Oh, you look so sad." And I was like, "I was so sad." uh,
Yeah.
um, but and it was like it was dumb because like I knew it's just a townhome. Like there are so many bigger reasons to be like sad than like, oh, I didn't get this townhome. Um,
Yeah, but and this is what we talked about too, where it's like no matter what you have been through, there's somebody who has been through what you perceive as worse.
mhm,
And as long as that person exists or people, there's oftentimes part of ourselves that's like, well, why am I complaining about this? Like, this
mhm,
shouldn't make me feel as bad as it does. Or
mhm,
why am I still getting triggered by this? I mean, like, I remember even after I started doing stand up, because like I would see the guy who molested me all the time around and like at every soccer game. And I remember every time I would see him, my heart would and I remember like even after I did started doing stand up, I would go home and I would see the guy in wherever Safeway, and it would be like, oh man, like I would get like annoyed with myself
mhm,
for like I thought I was done. It's been 12 years, you know, like come on,
mhm,
you just like
mhm.
figure it out. And I think that that frustration also makes it like
Yeah. And
adds
you
to
can
it.
feel like it's gonna last forever and you're
Yeah,
broken. Like you just feel like you're a broken human being. And
totally.
it sucks. It
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But just the point being, it's like no matter what you've been through, all ends of the spectrum, it's like the
Mhm.
people who have been through what most people would perceive as the worst know people that have been through worse that makes them
Right.
feel, oh, it's not that bad. And maybe
Right.
part of it's also like a defense mechanism. Oh,
Yeah.
what I went through isn't that bad, or who knows? But
I think what you learn in Vipassana meditation is like it's not so much the external event that causes suffering as much as your like internal like craving or aversion or like whatever you generate inside is
yeah,
like that's what's going to determine how much you're going to suffer.
yeah.
Yeah. So man, so
So you were, yeah. So you
well,
with your
yeah,
parents, feeling
I was
better.
with my parents, and like yeah, I was feeling much better, and like I still like felt that there was something in there, right? So like I tried all sorts of things. Um, like I tried therapy and with like I think I needed a different therapist. That particular therapist didn't really help.
Yeah,
I tried like I went to my second Vipassana retreat and that was good. It helped a lot. But like as I was like doing the body scans, like I could like feel like subtle sensations from like my head down. But once I got to my chest, like just big blockage right in my chest. And like just I couldn't.
was it like a blind area or
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't blind. It was like it was that anxiety feeling. Like I was
Mm,
like, oh, it's there. Um, and it was just unpleasant, gross sensation, right? So
yeah.
um
And for people that don't know, the
yeah.
technique of Vipassana is basically you spend the first, it's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And you spend the first 3 days doing what's called Anapana meditation, which is focusing your attention on this area. For those of you listening, it's above your upper lip. And if you're new to it, from the nose down. And if you're an old student, from the tips of your nostrils down to the top of your upper lip. And you spend the first 3 days just focusing on that area and just observing sensations in that area and basically ignoring all other sensations. And what Ben was just talking about with craving and aversion, it's like the concept of Vipassana. Well, one of the many things they teach you is that suffering, it comes from craving and averting to sensations that you experience in this physical form. So when you have a really positive experience, you want more of that. And if you have a negative experience, you don't want any more of that. And it's basically like resisting reality or wanting it to be something other than what it is. So, what Vipassana trains you to do is to observe every sensation that you experience and remain, as Ben said, equanimous to it, meaning no reaction. Whatever you experience, you observe it, understanding one of the characteristics that they teach you about all things is anicca, which is arising and passing away. So everything that exists at some point arose and will at some point pass away. So knowing the sort of ephemeral nature of all sensations, including yourself, the idea is to not create attachment to anything that is going to pass away, which is all things. And they talk about this concept of sankharas, which is basically like when you have a craving or an aversion, you create this tension within you, which is a sankhara, which is stored in your body until you no longer create sankharas. But as long as we're craving and averting to things in life, you will experience these tensions and resistances to reality that cause suffering. And the teacher, Goenka, has these discourses every night, which is like an hour long sort of breakdown of different things that you might be experiencing. And one of the things that he talks about is he uses an example of like, you've been putting wood on this fire, the wood being sankharas, that has been burning from the moment you were born and before you were born, your karma, all these things that are in this fire. And the way to get the fire to go out is to stop creating new sankharas, meaning stop reacting, stop craving and averting, and just observe. So I think what is so trippy about it is that the moment you stop putting wood on the fire's still burning. There's, decades of wood that you've been throwing on the fire that takes a long time to burn up, sometimes lifetimes. But all you have to do to no longer create suffering for yourself is stop reacting. So anyway, this is how we met each other, and this was the second retreat that you were on, was right after this
Right
experience
after
with
the
your parents.
experience. Yeah.
Okay,
And yeah, that was a really good overview. Yeah. And I'll just add to that. So
please.
those first 3 days when you're focusing on, the area around your nose, it's just to like sharpen your mind. And then the next 6 days, you use that sharpness that you've developed to like really observe every area of your body, from the tip of your head down to your toes. And yeah, you really get to know what's going on.
Yeah, it's like honing your attention for 3 days and then expanding it. They call it part by part. So you go through and scan every part of your body and basically observe the sensations in each part without reacting to them. And you begin to see all of these things that start, because as you continue to not react, old sankharas start coming to the surface and they manifest in sensations on different parts of your body, lots of which feel amazing and lots
Yeah.
of which feel horrible, like
Yeah.
such intense pain.
And
And so, yeah.
it's trippy too. Like, yeah, like I started getting visuals on this last one, and like I would feel like I was like peeling a tea bag off my shoulder, or like I was like having like coral, like or like sea anemones like break their crust off and like be alive again. Like it was
Whoa.
trippy. Yeah.
Wow.
So maybe I'll rewind actually to my first meditation retreat
Yeah.
in 2018. I heard about Vipassana after reading Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which like totally just completely gave me a new worldview. So I grew up pretty like conservative Mormon. My last name's Romney, right? And like I did the church thing for 28 years or so, and I read that book and like I was like, whoa, like this is such a more interesting story about like how humans evolved. We like I have this 200,000 year history where like we like developed language and we like learned how to tell fictions, and like that gave us the ability to like work together to like take over the planet, and unfortunately screw over like like all these other species, but like that's where we are today. And like it just gave me this worldview that like I was just like, I don't know, amazed by. And I remember thinking, whatever the author was on when he wrote this, I want some of that. So I looked up Yuval Noah Harari, found like on some podcasts, and found out he's a Vipassana meditator. He meditates an hour every morning, an hour every night, and does a 10-day silent retreat every year. And come to find out also later, he's also an assistant teacher. And
Cool.
he goes to India at like the International Vipassana Center where Goenka would used to teach. And he does that every year. So I was like, okay, I'm going to that center. And
Wow.
yeah, so booked my flight, went to India, and during that course, I didn't really know what to expect, which I think was good. Because like when you're like expecting something or like wanting something to happen, like it's less likely to happen, I think.
Yeah, you're craving.
Yeah, yeah. But
Well, and it's
anyway,
also if you I think before you've done it, the idea of being silent for 10 days
yeah,
and meditating for 8 to 10 hours a day is like an unfathomable task for
right.
lots of
Sounds
people.
really hard. And
Yeah.
it is really hard.
It is
It's
so
like
hard.
it's so
Yes.
hard. Like I remember sitting like just like with this ungodly pain in my legs and lower back, and like I tried to like add pillows, like but I didn't know how many to add. Like I was just bad at it. Now I can sit um basically all day cross-legged and it doesn't hurt, but like that first that first sit was hard.
Yeah.
And but then like so this was like day, gosh, 6, I think. I was, having this awful pain in my legs, got up, took a short break, came back, and like I was on the same cushion, having like the exact same surroundings, same environment. But for whatever reason, like that pain, it had passed away. And in its stead, like I started noticing like tingling in my hands. Like I was just like, oh, like I guess I feel some like kind of subtle vibrations going on in my hands. And like as I observed that, and just like noticed it come up my forearms and up my arms, and like it kind of just flooded my whole body with this just like vibrating, like euphoria. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And my heart was like pounding. And like honestly, it was kind of orgasmic. I thought I was gonna have an orgasm in the meditation. And so I kind of like cut it off. I was like, okay, stop. And like, whoa, what was that? And then I talked to the teacher the next day, and he's like, yeah, like, yeah, that
I'm coming
happened.
all the time.
uh, yeah, and he's like, just don't don't crave that. Like, don't try
Don't
it.
come, Ben.
Yeah,
Just don't come.
yeah, it's easy. And
Yeah,
like,
don't crave it, right?
right. And but like of course, the whole rest of the course, I'm like, gotta get that again. Like that was obviously like what I like. That was it was super amazing. Like I'd grown up my whole life thinking that like, oh, when you have a spiritual experience, you feel this like they call it burning in your bosom that like symbolizes like spiritual truth, and like that was a burning in the bosom. And uh like the cool thing is like I wasn't like praying or reading a scripture. Like I was just focusing on the present moment and my breath and the sensations in my body. And like um yeah, it was the most spiritual experience I had had up to that point. Um
No words.
no words, yeah.
No words needed.
Yeah, it's ineffable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that happened in India. 3 years later, I do my second course. Um, like, and like maybe I don't know why it took me so long to do my second course, but like I'm so glad that I did. I didn't make a lot of progress, but like it was definitely a safe space that helped me recontextualize a little
Yeah.
bit. Like I understood that the anxiety I experienced was not my anxiety, but like I actually had the impression that it was my like so it was ancestral. Like my grandfather had the same
Mm.
anxiety. Um, actually from like a home building, like he was a contractor. He owned a like a home building. Well, it wasn't a home building. It was more like he built some schools, but like his business went bankrupt when he was yeah probably about my age, and like that was a real source of stress for him.
Mm.
And like I kind of had like this vision of like oh like that like I saw myself in his shoes and realized like oh this is something that many people like many of my ancestors have dealt with too. So
That's fascinating.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, I didn't like I still had it in my chest after that. And so like I experimented with all sorts of things. So psilocybin mushrooms, which are decriminalized in Oregon. And I've spent some time in Oregon. I so probably the best trip. Oh, it's hard to say what trip is the best, but like this trip was pretty crazy. I did a 20-minute swim in the Columbia River. This was like November. It was, freezing cold. I don't know exactly what it does, but it like helps you kind of get into a state. And
Well,
then
pulls you into
yeah,
the moment pretty intensely.
yeah. And then I took what was it? Like, gosh, I think it was just like a couple grams, no, milligrams
Probably grams.
of cannabis. And
Oh. I thought
yeah,
you were talking shrooms. Yes.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
milligrams. Yeah, for sure.
I think it was like maybe 4 grams. Maybe like 2 grams. 2 grams of like an edible. This is just like not even a full piece. And then like
Mm.
1 gram of psilocybin.
Mm.
And
At the same time.
at the same time, that was my
Uh-huh.
first time like doing that crossfading or I don't know. But
Yeah, I think that's right.
and because like I wasn't like I took my first drink of alcohol when I was like gosh 27.
Wow.
Yeah, and yeah, I was not a druggie, but like um
That's
I
awesome.
had some close friends and some family members as well. My uncle during a family Zoom call with my grandma and everyone on the line was like, I just finished reading How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, and I just want to put out to the universe if anyone has any psilocybin, I would be interested in trying it. Oh, it's so funny. Anyway, I think there is this like awakening going on that like, oh, like these, you know, psychedelic plants, like actually they can have some really positive effects. They're not as evil as, you know, society has put them out to be.
Well, and I think the reason that society put them out to be evil was because they offered effective solutions to addictions that are required for them to benefit off of,
Mhm.
or profit off
Right.
of. Like if
Like,
you start,
why do you need a SSRI prescription if you can just have one
ah,
good trip, right? So,
yeah, or one good trip and you never smoke a cigarette again, or you cured from alcoholism or PTSD, anxiety, all these things that um, have become so consistent. Like so many people experience these things, and also the uh, things that we offer to help you with them are like none of them are like, yeah, take this one time and like trip balls for 6 hours and like you might never want to smoke a cigarette again. It's like take this forever and you might and you'll never it's still gonna
right,
probably not
right, for sure.
the
Yeah,
situation.
I think there's, oh, we could go
We
on.
could go
But
down a rabbit
yeah.
hole with this, yeah.
So anyway, so I took that and then I would, went on a walk along the Columbia River with my friend, childhood friend who also took some. So we were on the same plane, and
Hmm.
yeah, we sat down on like this log and did some Wim Hof breathing, which is it's kind of like pranayama. Basically, you breathe in, out, like deep, like quick breaths, like 30 of them, and then like kind of hyperventilating, but like rhythmic breathing, and
Hmm.
then you exhale completely and you hold as long as you can, and that's one round, and then you take a recovery breath and then do that again, and like in the like quiet stillness of that third exhale, I descended into like this other realm. Like reality just like peeled open and I was in this like space of just pure vibration. And like I was like part of the this universal vibration. Um and like consciousness and space was infinite. And like I was like, oh, I'm part of this giant universal consciousness. And that was when I realized that like, oh, like if I didn't breathe again, like if my body died, if I just decided not to breathe, like my consciousness would stay there. For the previous year or two, like I was like pretty agnostic. Like I was like, like I felt kind of duped with religion. I was like,
Hmm.
I think nothing happens when you die. But like I was during that experience was like, yeah, my body was gone, like consciousness would still be here. And
Wow.
yeah, and I also understood how like I would be able to find another body to inhabit in if that were the case. And I was like, okay, like reincarnation actually, like I never thought it was the thing that is real, but like I can get on board with that now. So um
Well, and we talked about this too after, during the retreat, where it was like, you know, we make so many conclusions about what happens after, and most of them, like, we make so many assumptions about what happens after, and yet we don't know what happened before. Like, we
mhm,
don't know how we got here, but we're sure that we never get here again. So it doesn't it's a funny thing to infer when it's like I don't know how I did it this time, but I'm sure that I'm not going to do it again. It's like,
mhm,
well, I don't know, it doesn't seem that like it's like if you can do it once, surely you can do it again.
mhm, mhm. Man. So anyway, so I tried mushrooms. Oh yeah, and later in that trip, I I was in my friend's car. We were just parked in the parking lot. We weren't driving, and um, we were listening to music. I think it was like Yo Yo Ma or something. And I just remember like feeling like oh my anxiety, seeing my anxiety as like this orange cloth that was tied like at one point my throat and another knot in my chest, like this warm orange cloth. And I was like, I just like could feel it. I was like, and those knots were tight. Like, I was like, yeah, like something like I can't just like will that away. I can't just say like, okay, go away.
Yeah.
Like it was, they were tight and like something biochemical still needed to happen.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, well, still got that anxiety. And yeah, this was like almost a year after the initial trauma.
Hmm.
And so then I signed up for an ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica. I Nada Brahma Healing Center was the place I went. It was I found it. I had a cousin that recommended some other or had heard about some other retreat, and I looked that one up, and it looked kind of expensive and also like commercialized, and I didn't really want that. And so, by the way, ayahuasca is an Amazonian brew made from two different plants in the Amazon, the ayahuasca vine and then some other plant that, when combined, create like a natural source of DMT, which is another psychedelic substance.
That
And
also occurs in our brain, right?
it
Yeah.
naturally, and I think people call it the God chemical. Is that right?
Yeah.
And like it releases when you die in large quantities. And so people with like near death experiences have experienced this. But
Which
it's
I think is all the more evidence to like, okay, there's probably some stuff that happens after. You know,
yeah.
if the one thing that we are all guaranteed is that we're gonna trip balls on DMT like when we die, it's like, oh, maybe this isn't something that I need to be afraid of.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know.
for sure. Anyway, so I like Googled, around to find a better, more like I wanted like a lower key shaman situation. And like Google and Reddit helped me find this healing center. And it was a week long retreat. They take your watch, so you don't know what time it is.
Love it.
Yeah, and your phone, of course. And um, there were 3 medicine nights with one day in between each one.
Mhm.
So the first night, so you fast during the day, and then the medicine is administered at night. And so you go into this tent, and each person has like their own like little mattress and a puke bucket. And the shaman like blows tobacco smoke over you to like cleanse you, and then gives you this cup of like dark green ayahuasca brew, which is like it smells and tastes so foul. It's like like green, gritty, like stomach acid, like it's
It's
so bad.
vile bile.
Vile, yeah. And like so you drink it, and then about 45 minutes it starts kicking it. You lay down, and around the same time it's kicking in, you start throwing up. And you can kind of hear it coming around, like, oh, the first person to take the brew, like, it's like, oh, I'm probably next, and then you throw up. But yeah, there were like 8 of us in this tent, and the shaman and his assistant, and the shaman was playing music, and
What kind of
yeah, I threw
music?
up. It was kind of like there were there's some different songs, but like most, I think a lot of it was in Spanish. So he was a local Costa Rican.
Mhm.
I remember the lyrics of one. I don't know Spanish, but I think it was like la abuela in su manos, something like the grandmother has you in her hands.
Yes.
So ayahuasca is it's referred to as grandmother ayahuasca, or grandmother Aya. And it really, oh, I remember we talked a bit about this, like different plants, different, hallucinogens have their own kind of like personalities almost. Like mushrooms definitely feel like they're connecting you to the rest of nature, to the universe, to people. Whereas ayahuasca it really felt like you were sitting at the knees of like this wise entity, who, a grandmother who just wanted to teach you about how the universe works.
Mm.
And so like the first night, yeah, after I threw up, I just started kind of seeing some visual. It's very visual. You close your eyes, and like it's just like watching a canvas be painted, with bright, classic psychedelic colors. And the first night I saw like the birth of the universe, and like the exponential expansion, like the accelerating expansion of galaxies, through space and time. And like I felt like I was like I was part of it. And I like had this understanding that like in this universe, like things, move at an accelerating rate. I mean, look at evolution, look at technology, just the pace of life in general. And like there's a few ways you can approach it. You can either stay on like the front face of it, and like, you go with the flow, stay in the present, or you can kind of get stuck in the past and like, you know
Resist reality.
yeah, resist. And it's kind of like surfing. Like if you miss your wave and you're like trying to like catch up to it, like that's a much harder endeavor than just like being present with the front face of the wave. So
Yeah.
um, and I saw my own birth, which was I was like everything was like pink and warm, and then suddenly everything was like cold and like bright lights, and I was like, oh, I want to go back. But then I remembered, oh, the universe had just taught me like to stay in the moment, like don't you
Oh.
yeah, don't go
And was this
back.
from your perspective?
Hmm.
Wow.
And then I like saw my like whole life. I didn't see like the details. I saw some things like my parents praying for me. I saw my cat. I saw like a few details, but mostly I just my life just flew by, and then I was everything was brown. And I was like, oh, I'm just a pile of shit. And like
Is
that's
that
what happened.
because mother's shit during pregnancy? Was that just like your first
Oh,
memory? Was just like
maybe. I don't think so.
okay.
I think it was just like when you die, your body just
You
returns to
shit
there.
also.
That's
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We that's interesting. We come into this world in shit and die and leave it in shit.
I
That
hadn't
is
thought
I
about
never thought
it.
about that. Yeah.
Uh, and
Okay.
then like
Wow.
yeah, so that was the first night. And then the second night, um, I went into it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna take 2 cups tonight because then I'll have twice the experience. And so I take the first cup and throw up, and then like maybe half hour later, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a second cup. And like I call the shaman over, and so I'm like trying to take it. And like I take like 2 gulps, and then like I just throw up into the cup.
Uh,
And it's just all like ayahuasca because I was fasting earlier. But and then like I finish it, like I drink my own throw up and the ayahuasca, and I finish it up. And the shaman told me the next day, like just watching you, I was about to throw up because I think he was also on ayahuasca. Anyway, so
yeah.
um I understood that like throughout all of the history of life, like most pretty much all animal species like lived a very heart-based, like intuition-based experience. And like humans are the only ones really that like are like, I have a plan. I'm gonna like use my brain to like decide that I'm gonna take 2 cups of ayahuasca and it's gonna be good. And I'm not gonna listen to my body. And I'm gonna go work for 8 hours and like like humans are like the only ones that are like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of I saw actually the evolution of life from like the very beginnings, 3.5 billion years ago when like some molecules like started vibrating next to each other and realized like, oh, we can if we vibrate at this frequency, we can make DNA like in this self-replicating pattern. Um, and like there was consciousness at that level. And that through like slow and just careful slow like modifications, like they developed into cells, and then into eukaryotic cells, and then like everything was like green, and I was like, oh, like chlorophyll and photosynthesis, and
Wow.
like grandmother Io was just like taking me through the evolution of life, and then like this explosion of you know of like mammalian life and like larger animals, and then I had the impression that like life or DNA kind of looked up at the stars and was like, if we're going to bring consciousness and love and heart-based living to the rest of the universe, we're going to have to, get up there, leave this rock. And so life evolved human level intelligence with brains like ours so that we could build spaceships to get to those other planets. I know it sounds, pretty nuts, but like,
Sounds pretty
yeah,
awesome. And
yeah.
like, man, it seems to make a lot of sense too. I
Um,
think that the phrase that you used, I remember it was like, yeah, we're basically here to populate the galaxy,
yeah, yeah, to
to
bring
bring
life,
consciousness to,
consciousness to the galaxy.
wow.
And and then like I just had this sense of like that's the role that humans are playing right now. Like we're essentially the reproductive system of Gaia, of the planet. And once we do that, once we've played that role, like we don't we don't need to have this like such high importance on intelligence. Like we can kind of go back to a heart-based living, like
Mm,
more intuition-based existence. And like I also had the sense in my own individual life that I shouldn't worry so much about like, oh, being the smartest person at work or whatever. Like it's okay to kind of I saw my brain and my heart as like almost like two different entities with like their own consciousnesses. And interestingly, my brain was male and my heart was female. And
mm.
there's a relationship there. And like I was, my brain was not really taking care of my heart. And um, yeah, I came out of that trip just being like, okay, I'm gonna hold my heart and like take care of her going forward. And
Wow.
so that was the second night. And then the third night, I kind of got the hang of how like the plant spoke to me like by that point. Like um I had learned that I can't like will or like force things to happen. Like I can't just be like, okay, I'm gonna fly now. And then like if I tried to make something happen, it would the vision would just disappear. But I
Wow.
could propose a prompt or ask a question and then just sit back and watch. And so I that on the third day or night, I was like, okay, like I asked a few different questions. And I remember one prompt I gave was like life partner. And I saw myself and then I saw like this chalk outline of a person and it was empty. And I remember thinking like, well, maybe there's no one there. And then I like had to kind of come to terms with that. And I did. I realized like, wow, like every like there are different roles to be played in life. Like some people, you know, are like, like the Buddha, he left the family life to like, you know, pursue enlightenment and bring, that peace and happiness to, to others in the world. And like that's a noble role that he played. And like I had grown up thinking like, oh, like the only role that you need to aspire to is to have a bunch of kids
Yeah.
uh, and then I realized like no, like there are other important roles. And that's when I saw life as like a tree. And like I am a leaf on this tree of life. And yeah, each leaf is a little different, but my leaf isn't any more or less important than the other neighboring leaves. And we're all just going to fall off the tree eventually anyway. And I saw my brother and like in the past I had kind of felt some like a little sadness for him because he has a severely a daughter with like, some severe disabilities who will be in a wheelchair her whole life and won't be able to talk or feed herself. And I mean, she's she's adorable and amazing, and
Hmm.
but like takes a lot of time to take care of. And I remember thinking, in the past, like, dang, like my brother he's such a talented person, he could be using his time on helping so many other people. Um, it's kind of unfortunate that this is the situation. But during this trip, I saw myself in his shoes and um, I felt the love that he has for his daughter and like just had this understanding that the role that he's playing as her caregiver and parent is like so important. Like it's it is also a noble path. It's no less noble than any other path that he could be taking. So yeah, that was really neat.
That's so
Um,
powerful.
mhm,
And
mhm.
it's probably the part of us that would react in thinking that any path would be less noble than another path would be the head
Yeah,
operating
yeah.
instead of the heart, which you felt, the love that he felt for his daughter and that his daughter felt for him, and
Mhm.
that you felt as a leaf on this tree, that, as a leaf on the tree, you are the tree. You are an extension of the tree. You are the energy
You
that
grew
the
up out
tree
of it.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. You're not a tree that you're not a leaf that was floating along and that attached itself to the tree. You don't exist without the tree.
Mhm.
And yet even when you fall off, you decompose and
Yeah.
turn into mulch, and then the tree reabsorbs you, and then you pop out in a new leaf, or whatever it is, a piece of bark.
Mhm.
It's a never, and even the moments that seem to be us disconnecting or not existing are an essential part of existence. It's like what we were talking about earlier about not knowing what happened before, but we're here now. It's
Mhm.
like, so all of us, none of us can remember a time before. So it appears that we didn't exist before, and yet we all exist now. So a key component to existence is not existing. There's nobody who's always existed. So in order to exist, you have to not exist. So maybe we shouldn't be afraid of non-existence, which is what apparently happens when we die.
I mean, everything is impermanent,
Yeah.
including non-existence. So,
Oh, that's a bar. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. I remember you
Um,
talking about that when you were talking about the tree and yourself as a leaf on the tree. And the way that you described it is, it's like, well, some leaves don't have leaves next to them.
right.
And the that conclusion is like such intense, powerful acceptance of what is. It's
Mhm.
like, and to also register that in the same way that a lot of the anxiety that you have or we have or various different feelings are not ours. It's either ancestral trauma or projections onto us from people that we happen to come into contact with, or you know abuse that we went through projected onto us. The belief to have a lot of kids is
Mm.
also just something, I mean,
Yeah.
sure we are, like, biologically programmed to want to reproduce, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be with one person or one person the whole time, or with anyone.
Mhm.
Um, just because we have biological wirings doesn't mean we're all meant to do the same thing.
Mhm.
And just that recognition that every path is like as significant as any other path, and that the experience that your brother is having with your niece is like as significant as Buddha,
Mhm.
as essential as Buddha. It's a path of that a leaf on the tree is on, which is, it's a universal path, and no path on the universe is more significant than another path. It's
Mhm.
so amazing. And then I remember, I you also talked about how the shaman, when you said that, go ahead, yeah,
Yeah. Wait. Oh yeah,
about,
how I could
yeah,
like see that vision differently.
yeah,
Yeah. So after there's an integration day always after the meditate or after the medicine night. And yeah, the shaman was like, well, like you saw yourself first in the vision. Like maybe this means like you should focus on yourself, like healing yourself, improving yourself, and then this empty space will be filled. And maybe you don't know what they're going to look like yet. But like something to find out. And so yeah,
yeah,
I
just
could see
because
that
it's,
happening too. Yeah.
yeah, just because you don't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. You see the outline of them, but it also feels like the fun in existing is not knowing.
Hmm.
And it's like, I think it was Alan Watts who said a future known is already the past. Where if you see what this person looks like and you interact with them during this ayahuasca trip or whatever, you're going to be like so aggressively on the lookout potentially
Yeah.
for her or
Yeah.
him or
You kind
whatever.
of look
Like,
like it. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's like you're trying it, instead of doing what you did, which is totally be in the moment and ride the wave, or miss the wave and wait for the next one and just float in the water. You're trying to grasp or cling or crave or crave an experience or avert to the individual path, the solo path, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And as we know, it's like the best thing you can do is just accept what is.
Yep.
And it was so great for you to come to that conclusion on your own before the shaman was able to say, well, maybe, she just hasn't, or whatever, hasn't showed up yet. The person hasn't showed up yet. But to become okay with being alone, I think is an essential part of being ready to be with someone,
Right. I
because
think.
it's hard to really know who you are or what you want in a person if you don't really know what you want yourself. And it's like, it's just the way that it unfolded is so perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. So I think maybe we can fast forward to the meditation retreat where we met.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do it in California because I wanted to go visit my brother and who lives in the Bay Area. And so I, signed up, and it's a beautiful campus. Like
Oh,
they've got a
yeah.
pagoda, and they've got like these beautiful trees, and the sunsets and sunrises are amazing.
It's
Uh,
so intense. It's the most beautiful center I've seen for sure.
yeah.
And
Uh,
I'll pop up some photos. I have a
yeah.
photo of the pagoda and the lookout point. It was really like cloudy and misty, like the final day when we got our phones back. But the pagoda was so incredible because you can go into these cells in the pagoda, which are basically like isolation tanks, but you're not floating. You're just on carpet. It's like your own personal little isolation tank, and it's so amazing because I, there's a lot of things that come up that make you feel intense emotions, and sometimes you don't want to like cry in the Dhamma hall when you're right next to all these other people. But in a pagoda cell, I mean, I was just wailing, like just letting loose emotionally, and it was so amazing to have a place where you could go to have those types of experiences. And oftentimes in the Dhamma hall, people are sneezing or various different things that you come to not only be okay with, but actually to appreciate. I found it's like, oh yeah, hey, you're gonna get through this. Like I was sneezing earlier today, or I'm sneezing currently, and like it's just part of it. Like don't worry, because every time I would sneeze or something, I would be like, everyone's mad at me now. And then as the retreat goes on, you begin to just, again, that's just what reality was in that moment. So it's okay. But still, to have a place that you could go to be able to like just meditate totally solo was powerful. And on top of it, the whole place was so trippy, like the woods, the walks through the woods. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, those trees with like the curly bark.
Yeah, and the deep red like trunks. Oh man, that was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so the first day, like the first full day, basically, so I, oh yeah, by the way, I have a condo now. I ended up getting something smaller. It's not a townhouse. I went with the same builder. Like I figured like, oh, apparently my heart liked this area and the big windows. I have really nice big windows that face the mountains. And I think that's part of what I think I had fallen in love with.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I have this smaller condo that still has a good view. On this first full day of the retreat, I remember thinking, I don't know if the garage door is closed. And the keys are in the garage. And the reason, like, I knew I closed the garage door, but I remember like telling my mom how to open and close the garage door with her app, like just over the phone. And I remember getting a notification that the door opened, but I didn't remember it getting one that it closed. And like my phone was locked in a locker at this point. So I was like, I can't check if the garage door is open or not. And there were keys to the front door in the garage. And so like maybe someone's moved into my condo. And like I was kind of freaking out. And then that night, the discourse with Goenka at night, like he talks about the 10 parmis, and the first one is like these are things that help you along the path
Hmm.
to and the first one is renunciation. And like all of us had renounced our home lives for these 10 days. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna renounce my condo. Like, if someone wants to move in, well, yeah, they can have it, and I'm not gonna be upset. And like, I think that helped me kind of break attachment to it, which
Yeah.
is a good thing. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna be like mad or upset if something bad happens. Like, yeah, I'll like have my insurance plan. Like, I'll take the logical steps necessary to like make things right, but like I'm not gonna get worked up about it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was an interesting first day.
And that
But
logic is like applicable to every moment,
mhm.
everything, anything that you feel attachment to. You can take that route that's like no, recognizing that craving the garage door to be closed is creating suffering for yourself, and then just deciding, all right, if it happens, it happens. Maybe somebody needs to live in there for 10 days. And like when we get back, maybe they'll thank you, create an amazing friend. Maybe that's the woman. Maybe that's, or whoever it was, maybe that's
The
the
life
person in the
partner.
chalk. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And then let's see, like the night, like of the fourth day, I think it was the fourth day, in the discourse, Goenka talks about the um like the experience that the Buddha had under the Bodhi tree when he
Mm-hmm.
was meditating for 40 days before he became enlightened at 35. He essentially was like taking his, like he was doing like a deep like operation on, on his psyche and like just taking things apart and like digging deep into what causes suffering. And like that's how he kind of learned the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path was like, by kind of dissecting his own suffering. And um I was like, so day five I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. And so I in the pagoda cell I like told the story um of the same story I've told you about the whole home buying stress. And every time I've told that story, um, in the past, this doesn't happen anymore, but in the past, I've felt that same grip on my heart, like that tightness.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I was like, okay, I'm gonna dissect this story. Like, let me tell like a shorter, like I'm gonna see if I still feel anxiety if I only talk about like the part just about the townhome, like leave out the condo, like just like let's just focus on the townhome. And then like, okay, let's just focus on, let me just tell the story of the phone call. Okay, like, and I'd feel it. And then okay, let me just tell the story of like when I said like, to the home builder, like I loved I loved the townhome, but I'm looking for something else. And like that was the essence of what made the anxiety arise. So I was like, okay, cool. Like maybe I can like kind of work on that, like keep telling that in like a safe place, and maybe it'll, become less traumatic as I kind of practice that. But I didn't want to do it too much because like I didn't want to just be feeling anxiety all the time. Anyway, the next day, or no, I think the evening of the fifth day in the discourse, Goenka talks about, I might have the discourses wrong,
Yeah.
but he talks about how the first thing that the Buddha said when he became enlightened, like when he, as an enlightened being, he like, opened his eyes under the tree and he said, I've just seen my countless lives that came before, and every one of them was, you know, birth, suffering, death, birth, suffering, death, birth, suffering, death. And it's this cycle that's continued until now. And then he addresses the universe and he says, home builder, um, I don't want you to build me another home, like referring to the body as a home. And he says like the building materials, like that, the wood that you were talking about, of sankharas, there's no more. there's there's no more materials, and I'm ready for a life without suffering, and I'm ready for what's next. Like I'm paraphrasing, but like essentially, um, he's ready for nirvana. But yeah, the translation from Pali to English is home builder. That he uses, which is so crazy.
So
And
trippy.
yeah, and so like I was like, okay, wow. And then the next day I was like, all right, I'm going to practice, like use this meditation. Like most of the meditation, you're not actually like you're not supposed to be like doing all this like mind experiments that I'm talking about. You're just supposed to be focusing on your sensations. But like
Yeah.
occasionally, like why not? So
It's intuitive sometimes.
yeah,
You kind of had, instead of it being like, thinking a bunch about, okay, well, the garage, I've accepted the garage, but now what about, I forgot to feed my cat, or whatever the thing is. It's like
yeah,
it's a much more intuitive and intentional thought rather than sort of like a habitual thing. It's like what you were just saying
yeah,
Buddha was doing. It's a
yeah.
what was the word? What did
Scientific dissecting of
dissecting? Yeah,
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 yeah, and like yeah, none of it's like a ritual like that I would like just do. Like I'm just, in the moment, like whatever, like my intuition is kind of telling me to do. Like, so that afternoon, I think of the sixth day, I was like, okay, like I'm going to essentially like talk to the universe, you like using that same language that I talked to the home builder, and like use it as like an opportunity to practice death. Um, And so I was like, okay, home builder. I'm, I've loved life. I loved everything I've experienced, but I'm ready for something else. And like, as I said that, like in that context, I like felt this energy going down my spine and like this rush of good chemicals that honestly I felt like I was like traveling through space like really fast like and
whoa,
it was like just this really interesting sensation. And then when it subsided, I noticed that like I could feel like subtle sensations all the way through my body, like there was no longer that blockage that I had in the previous retreat. um and then I decided to like try telling the story again, just in my mind, like about the home building experience, and like no anxiety at all. Um, and like how cool, like be able to
yeah,
recontextualize that, traumatic phone call
yeah,
and like see it in this, slightly different light that like helped me realize like, oh, like maybe that was a practice for like maybe I've had that tried to have that conversation between my former lives. Like every time I've died, I've been like, I want to tell the home builder that I don't want it, but I do want it, so I'm not going to. And like it's obviously like a hard conversation.
yes,
Now I've practiced it, and like maybe I'm ready now to like have that, to like actually say it. Like next time I die, like home builder, I'm ready for what's next. Don't build me another body.
yeah.
Maybe I don't know. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
that was that was really cool.
And it's so significant that what triggered all of the heart stuff was saying no to a home.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, come on.
yeah.
It's unreal.
It's like yeah, that,
Oh, what a trip.
yeah, like it's so serendipitous, right?
Oh man, and again it kind of comes back to saying no too.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah,
don't want another home.
yeah. And it's hard because
Oh,
like life is amazing. There are some really just amazing things that I love about life. Like I'm sure
yeah.
I've loved most all of the lives I've lived. And but there's suffering as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a hard conversation. But
It's so sick. I love it. So what
yeah,
happened after that?
yeah. So after that, I was like, well, I'm done here. Like, like if that was all that happened during this retreat, like I'm more than satisfied. And
Yeah.
so the next day, I kind of just like to be honest, slacked off a little. Like I still went to the like required group sittings,
Yeah.
but like I slept through one of the like you know times where you should be meditating
Hmm.
by yourself. And after that, I felt bad, just like guilty, and so I was like, okay, like I'm going the next day, day 8, I'm gonna do it by the book. I'm gonna do it perfectly. So I woke up at 4 a.m. I like was in the meditation hall at 4:30, and I like did everything right. And the that afternoon, around like also, by the way, I was the whole morning was really hard. Like I was just like just remembering all the things that I feel guilt about and shame. Um, it's interesting, like during these retreats, like a lot of times the good things only come after like the really hard things.
Mm.
So that morning was really hard. Just feeling like, I've done a lot of things I feel bad about. And I think especially like having like a kind of strict religious upbringing, like there's some residual, just like, shame that like
Yeah.
I, was, working through. And but beyond that, just little things like, oh, like how I've treated coworkers, or like I don't know, I just felt like I had this just baggage that I hadn't let go of.
Yeah.
And um so yeah, around 2 p.m. I was sitting there, and oh yeah, but previous to this, like, but every time I had sit for meditation between January and this retreat, which was in
End
October.
of October, beginning November. Yeah.
Yeah. I like after like 10 minutes or so of meditating, I would feel like my crown chakra kind of like go like wah, 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 like
Yeah.
trying to like open a little. And like it was like this weird sensation that kind of felt like the beginning of like tripping on ayahuasca, but like not really. Um anyway, so like like looking back, like I think maybe I had some residual latent ayahuasca in my system still.
Yeah.
And
That's what
so
happens when you drink your puke with it. It
yeah,
stores in your
yeah,
body
yeah, it's the
differently.
secret. The
Yeah.
stomach acid like burns a little hole so that like there's this like chamber for the ayahuasca to hang
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
exactly.
Anyway, so that afternoon of day 8, I was meditating in the Dhamma hall, and I started like tripping basically, like the that
The wow wow.
chakras, wah, 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 it like opened up all the way, and I like started, it was like I was tripping on ayahuasca without the throwing up, which was nice.
Yeah.
But like yeah, it was like that headiness where like it's almost like you're, gosh, like underwater, and like you just like kind of feel like high. That I like, that was my headspace. And I started to see this light, like a white light that turned into a glowing white butterfly. And like I understood that the butterfly was me, like it represented me, and it was carrying its old cocoon
Mm.
um, in its legs while trying to fly.
Hmm.
And I understood that the cocoon represented, some shame, regret, like missed expectations, like baggage, just baggage that it didn't need anymore. Like
Yeah.
maybe some of those things served a purpose earlier in its evolution, but like it didn't need it. Like it wasn't, it was no longer serving the butterfly to be carrying that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, just, you know, just let it go, just drop it. You know, you can just let go. And as I said that and I watched the butterfly like let go of its cocoon, I felt just this enormous release of just like this weight being lifted off my back, my chest. Like I just felt light. And I, the butterfly kind of like flew off into the distance. It faded away. But the lightness stayed. And it's honestly,
Mm.
it's stayed since then. And I spent the rest, I was like in the zone. Like I didn't want to leave the meditation hall. I used the restroom twice, but I didn't go to tea time. And yeah, from 2 p.m. all the way through that evening, 9 p.m., I was in the Dhamma hall with,
Wow.
a couple bathroom breaks. Oh yeah, and I remember telling you like I had seen the monk. There were two monks, and at least one of them never washed his hands after using the bathroom. And I was like, why aren't you like previously? And but then I used the restroom and I was like, I don't want to wash my hands. That might like, wake me up out of this trip that I'm having.
Yeah.
And so like maybe monks are just tripping all the time and like I don't know. But
It could be.
could be.
I also wonder if because you were saying with the Columbia River, the freezing sort of primed you. So it
Yeah.
also might have made you trip harder and it was just an unsanitary monk.
Yeah, there's no way to know.
But
Yeah.
regardless, those guys were so cool. I
Yeah,
talked
they
to them
were
on the
good.
last day. They were just like
Yeah.
incredibly nice. And they kind of felt like they were tripping,
Yeah.
just like
Just totally
really
stand.
intensely engaged with you. It was
Yeah.
awesome. They were
Present.
so
Yeah.
so nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so wow, so two
So
to
I'm
nine.
yeah, I'm tripping and I'm seeing these like amazing like ceramic tiles like the roof of like a mosque, mosaics, like seeing
Mm,
these really colorful mosaics and yeah, nothing really meaningful, but it was just beautiful. And I also realized that day that I had been craving like that kind of like euphoria that I'd felt in India, and I just kind of accepted. And this was like previous to the butterfly, like but the same session. I just
yeah.
accepted that like I might not ever get back to that same euphoric state, and that's okay. Like
Hmm.
that was what it was, and like I'm not going to try. Like if that's the only time I ever experience it in that way, like that's okay, and I can be grateful that I had that, but I don't need to like crave it again. And similarly, like I feel like I had felt as high as that was, like as amazing as that euphoria was, like I'd felt like almost as low as you can go with other moments, like when I was like having the like freeze response and those panic attacks. Like it's hard to imagine much worse. Like I know that could be, but like so I was like, well, like I've experienced this range of feelings, and like I don't need to like crave the highs or be feel aversion towards the lows anymore. Like I can just be in the moment and like not care. And like
Yeah.
that was part of the release, I think, was just like not trying to get anywhere anymore. And
Hmm.
um I think that kind of helped me kind of let go of the baggage too. But
A phrase that my dad and I came up with. We were talking about like, sort of the stresses that he has with my mom, and obviously my mom has stresses with my dad too. But it's not so much like current stresses. It's the stress that something current caused you to feel uh, as a result of all the times you felt this way in the past.
mm,
And just like you were saying, luggage, like we called it a backpack of burdens that you're carrying around that are all the times that somebody has made you feel this way or other people have made you feel this way. And this particular person happens to be now the target of decade old backpack that you've been sort of waiting for but what we sort of fail to realize oftentimes is that you can drop your backpack in any moment, just as the butterfly drop your cocoon. There's
Mm.
nothing and no one forcing you to carry around all of these times that you've all basically carry around the past, and generally it's the negative past. It's not like you're carrying around a
Right.
backpack of all the positive experiences. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which
it's
is
it's,
unfortunate.
it's
Like,
yeah,
why
totally.
is it that way? But
Yeah. I don't know. um I actually was reading something the other day called the negativity bias, which is basically
Mm.
talking about our tendency to remember negative things from the past because remembering a time that something good happened is not. It feels like you need to remember the negative times because they're things that you need to fix or things that you need to change or get even from the people that made you feel this way or whatever.
And they might
Um,
like save your life in the future. Yeah. Where like
what's that?
so like evolutionarily it makes sense.
Oh,
Like if
yes.
if you're in the forest and you saw a tiger and it was terrifying, you're gonna remember that so that you don't get eaten by a tiger in the future. But like if you saw like if you had like I don't know like a really tasty plum, like
Yeah.
that's like not a life or death experience. So like you don't need to like remember that as much.
Yeah, the weight is completely different on remembering the plum versus the tiger. And you're right. It's like we still have like monkey minds, as Goenka put it too, where we're still operating as if there could be tigers, which there could be danger, but we're generally not running into situations where we're like not the top of the food chain and are going to be like chased by a tiger. And yet we still are biologically programmed to treat certain. So it's like because we don't have tigers to attach these worries to, we attach it to, oh man, this person said something mean to me one time and
Right.
now that's the equivalent of danger, like life or death, when it has like no substance. But in any case, it's I think that's totally what it is. And just recognizing that you can just literally by just entering the moment, like coming into contact with what's really happening and not resisting reality, you can totally just remove the
Yeah.
backpack and interact with the person right now instead of all
Right.
the times that they've pissed you off in the past.
Yeah. And like I'm so grateful that I had my meditation training going into the trauma
Yeah.
because like I think had I not like I probably would have blamed my roommate. Like I
Mm.
probably would have been like, dude, like this is all because of you. And like because I was aware that no, like this is just an internal sensation. Um, like I'm gonna observe that, see how long it lasts. And like it's not my roommate. Like so we're still like super close friends. And I
Yeah.
think that my meditation practice like kind of helped save that. And I'm super grateful for that. At the same time, like mindfulness is it's a two-winged bird, right? So like
Yeah.
one wing is awareness, and I feel like my awareness was there, but like the other wing is equanimity, or just like kind of having a balanced mind, like not assigning
Yeah.
judgment too hard. And
Acceptance and awareness.
yeah, and I was not super equanimous, so like I learned that I need to develop that more. Um, and I think especially during this past retreat, I've kind of been working on that, and I feel like my equanimity has started to catch up with my awareness. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's such a important practice, and like it's kind of a bummer that like I went the first 28 years of my life like not even knowing that this existed, but I'm super grateful for it now.
Well,
Uh,
and we were talking about this too, how it feels like it comes into your life when you are ready and need it.
mhm.
Like I think we probably talked about this on the last day, but I found out recently because had remembered that my dad would bring me to child meditation retreats.
Mm,
They have like 3 days for kids,
mhm.
and I didn't realize this until recently when I was talking with him, but he had brought me to one once a year, every year during the exact time period that the molestation was going on for.
Oh,
So
interesting.
age 8, 9, and 10, I went to a Vipassana kid retreat every year.
Huh.
And I started getting molested when I was 8 and it
Yeah.
ended when I was 10.
Interesting.
And so it was like, even though my dad had no idea that I was being molested, he was able to provide me with this, experience that may have been the reason that I spoke up, because
Right.
I had, a heightened awareness of the situation. Who knows? Or if nothing else, I was able to practice Vipassana while I was getting molested. There's some
Right.
sensations there. Trying to remain a quantumist in that shit. Tough.
It's
But
like the ultimate test.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I was frozen anyway. So, but I think the thing about it is just like, I didn't go back again until literally like the month that my grandpa died. And I
Mhm.
didn't know that he was going to die. And then we were able to bring him the vibrations back from Vipassana. But it literally just shows up like,
Yeah.
but we are extremely fortunate to have come into contact with it, as early or as like, or whatever, right on time, you
Yeah.
know?
And
So
it's a learning, it's a path. It's like
yeah,
it's a long path, and you keep learning. I remember you were telling me that like you were having difficulties like with your tracking with your eyes.
yeah.
And yeah, do you want to just kind of what were you doing with your eyes?
Yeah, so basically tracking being when you're wherever your attention is as you're doing Vipassana, my eyes were pointed to where our attention was. And
Hmm.
so it was like this really frustrating thing that I had dealt with on all of the retreats that I'd been on. And I found out from my dad that he'd been dealing with this he's been on like 25 of these retreats. And like everyone, he's like, oh, I'm always tracking. It's so frustrating. And it's bad. It's like, it can give you headaches. It can, you're not supposed to be like doing anything with your body other than sitting and moving your attention around. So you learn Vipassana on the fourth day. And between the fourth day and the sixth day, I asked the teacher about tracking, and he said the same thing to me, which is just like, yeah, just relax, it's all good, don't do that, type thing. And I had heard the same sort of thing from all the teachers that I asked about this, and they all kind of said similar things, and I wasn't able to stop. And then on the sixth day, it was before the 2:30 meditation. I was meditating for like an hour and a half in the pagoda cell. And during that meditation, that's when I realized that the tracking that I'd been doing, so I would be, if my attention was on the top of my head, my eyes would be looking to the top of my head, but slightly to the right. So just like so slightly.
Yeah.
And but it was enough for me to register like, okay. And I did like a scan, and I went all the way down to the bottom and my toes, and I'm like, that's not where my toes are. Like
Yeah.
I'm looking shifted.
Yeah.
And what I sort of realized is that it was similar to the soul retrieval experiences that I'd had during EMDR, which is the only time I've ever experienced anything like that, was those two EMDR sessions.
Mhm.
And after the first one, I was like, "Oh, I'm back, baby. I'm back in my body. This is it. I knew nothing could feel better than this." And then
Mhm.
I did it again, and then it got even more back in my body. And so it made me aware that, oh, I wasn't fully back yet, and yet I felt
Right.
so amazing. And so it's
Slightly opposite.
possible,
Mhm.
yes, it's possible that that's still the situation. And so what I registered in the pagoda cell was that it feels like my eyes are looking where my soul is,
Mhm.
and or where my brain thinks my body is, which is
Mhm.
where my soul is, or I haven't totally figured out what it is yet, but I think my eyes are looking where my being thinks my being is.
Right.
And so I had this recognition, and I was sort of scanning down, and I was at like my lower neck, like right at the base of my neck. And I started, again, just the same thing that you were talking about, where there was some sort of intuitive inclination to start doing this. But as I was going through part by part, and I got to started with like my shoulders, and I just started like talking to my shoulders and being like thanking them for everything that they've done. And I just happen to be at my shoulders first, which is like one of my favorite parts of my body, because I like have one of the few parts of my body that I feel like I have like a genetic, like, oh yeah, I got big shoulders. Yeah, I feel like really good about that egoically. And I was just like, God, you guys are so sick. Like you're like mountains, like I was just like really like complimenting my shoulders. And then I went to my arms and my forearms and my fingers, and every part of my body. I went all the way down to my legs, and I played soccer all my life, and I was like, oh, you magical legs. Like, how did you know to do all of this stuff? I didn't even train you, and you just knew how to do these things. It was so amazing. And as I was like complimenting every part of my body, I was also like saying, like, you're safe here. It is completely safe in every part. Wherever my attention was, it's safe right there. And as I was going back up, I eventually got up to my neck and I realized, oh, I started this when I was like at my shoulders. And so I still haven't done any of my face. And I started going back up to my back up my neck and then to my chin and my mouth. And I was like, oh, tasting and speaking. Oh, you brilliant mouth. Well done, you know? And then like smelling the smells of the universe and hearing the sounds. And then my eyes seeing the sights of the universe. It was like everything, like every part that I got to that I did this to felt more integrated than before. And then I got up to the top of my head and I was at my scalp and I was just like, "Oh, thank you brain, mind, like you're so safe. You're so safe." I kept saying that. And like it was like, I don't know, a few moments after I got to the top of my head, I experienced and it was so funny because of course Goenka said like, in another discourse later in the course, he talked about it's like pouring a bucket of water from
Mhm.
over the top of your head that's pure awareness that flows down over every part of your body and covers all of your body.
Such a
And
good description of it.
yeah, and that's it, and it sounds similar to what you experience. It comes in at the top, down your spine, or he calls it free flow, which is basically total awareness of subtle sensations at any part of your body. And I thought that I had experienced this in the past retreats that I had done. But when I had this experience, it was like, oh, here's what it is. And I knew in that moment that it was like, oh, I'm back. Like I just shifted back. One, because the tracking, even though the tracking I think was still going on more subtly, it wasn't shifted anymore. So I was like looking where my actual attention was, or where it was all like back and integrated. And I just started. This is when I really cried in the pagoda cell. This was the bawling, and it was like, dude, it was like euphoria combined with sadness, which the more I cry, the more I feel like every cry is like a good cry. Like there's no bad tears. Like it's always a good release. And euphoric sadness, euphoric release that I don't know, it felt like I was back in my body fully for the first time since perhaps the molestation started. And
Wow.
and so I was back and crying, and I remember when I have no idea how much time passed or anything, but I eventually left the pagoda cell, and it was raining for the first time during the sit, and so I walked back to my room, and it was raining, and I was crying, and I was like, "This is the best shit ever, dude!" Like I felt the same way, where it was like if the retreat ended right now, I would have more than I could have ever imagined I could get from this, and it was just, oh man, it was just total bliss, and then of course, like you said, it was still hard after that. Like it wasn't just like easy, peasy post. It was still difficult, but it just felt like anything I could do anything. Like I'm back in my body, so what? Come on, it's like limitless possibilities now. And so we were sharing our stories. At some point, you came up with the idea or the theory that what tracking is it's like us doing EMDR for ourselves, a version of it. As our eyes are closed, we're moving our eyes, where our attention goes. And you had said, one of the things that you said was like, maybe it's not totally consistent because EMDR is just side to side. And I don't know if all therapists do this, but my therapist oftentimes in the deep parts of EMDR, she'll start going diagonally. And so
Right.
that once I said that and we talked about that, it was like, oh shit, that is what's been going on. And not to mention the fact that I was looking up and to the
Yeah.
right. I was
Yeah, you
looking
were looking
diagonally.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trippy, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
So
really cool.
I think like, yeah, so eye movements, a lot of people are, when I first heard about EMDR, like I was skeptical, like, how can moving your eyes, do anything? But like like the like REM sleep, like your eyes are moving around, and like that's where your body processes memories, and like it somehow puts you in this state where you can like put yourself back in a memory. And we do it all the time throughout life, like not just when you're meditating or with a therapist. Like part of having a view, like not living in like a shoebox apartment without a window, like the benefit of a view is you can move your eyes and like you
Uh-huh.
feel safe because you're not like stuck somewhere. And then like conversely, when you're like looking at your phone and your eyes are
Ah,
just looking at like this small point right in front of you, like that's the opposite effect. And like I've actually noticed
wow.
when after I've been looking at my phone for like 5 minutes, like I just feel crappier, like
Yeah.
regardless of what I'm looking at. Um, on
Dude, I mean, so another thing about Vipassana is that it's totally free. Everything is run on and paid for by donations from people that have done it, which is like the ultimate selling point. It's like, yeah, this is completely free. That's how you know something works, you know? But
yeah.
they have a donation table on the last day where you can go and give a donation if you'd like. And I sat down and I didn't have a checkbook. And so they were like, oh, we take PayPal. And I was like, perfect. So I turned my phone on and
Mhm.
like, dude, I like literally like just put it as soon as I like looked at the screen. It was the Apple was fine, but you know what, the loading Apple. But then once it like popped up with all the apps, I like just put my phone down and was like, I'm gonna have to send a check in because I like literally cannot look at this right now. It was
Yeah.
a similar feeling to being on mushrooms where you look at your phone and it looks like all the icons are like flowing off of it and it makes you want to throw up. It was like that, but I wasn't, nothing was moving. It was just the like
Feeling.
intensity of stimulation, I think, but
Yeah.
maybe more so what you're talking about, which is just like it's like a sucking of attention. You're so aware of your attention for 10 days, and it's like this thing just absorbed all of it in a second. And I don't know if I really want that. If it's your norm, if you're using it all the time every day, it's hard to register that it makes you feel this way. And maybe it's just because we're used to it and we're kind of numbed out to it, and then we have like a total detox from it that
Right.
you go back to it and you're like, this have I always felt this way using this and I just haven't been aware?
And so many of us, we use our phone as our alarm clock. Like it's the first thing that you look at in the morning,
Yeah.
and often the last thing that you look at before you go to bed. And like it's it can't be good for us. Like obviously I still have a phone. Like
Of course,
obviously
yes.
there are good like benefits from it, but I've actually just since this last retreat, I've started using my watch as an alarm clock,
Nice.
as an alarm. And yeah, like it's still like a small point. Like maybe it doesn't completely solve the like EMDR thing we were talking about, but like I'm at least not going to be trapped in by it and like check Reddit on my watch. Like
That's the thing. Yeah,
I
you
can't do
can't go
that.
on your watch and watch a movie. Yeah,
Right.
or YouTube or whatever. Yeah, it's like I know I feel the same way where I rarely, even if I go on to Instagram, for example, for a purpose, I
Mhm.
rarely remember the purpose when I actually, by the time I get on the app and start scrolling, I don't remember why I got on there for the first place,
Mhm.
in the first place. And I also don't, I don't do the thing, even if I do remember, I don't do it and then get off of it. I do the thing, which might take 30 seconds, and then I'm on it for 30 minutes. And
Mhm.
it's not, again, you're so acutely aware of your feelings that you realize this does not make me feel good. It
Right.
feels so much better to look at the ceiling, to look
Yeah.
at nothing than than this thing. So I'm totally the same way, man. It's a very that's one of the trippiest parts of reintegration.
For sure. I'm like, so I'm a software engineer, and I like have this like love-hate relationship with technology.
Hmm.
Um, like part of me is techno optimistic. Like I do think that technology will play a big role in the role of humanity, and like what we were talking about, bringing consciousness, to the galaxy.
Yeah,
But at the same time, like I'm such a tree hugger. Like
yeah,
I love nature, and I think the way that we've approached technology in some ways like obviously is kind of counterproductive. Like yeah, like it's absorbing our attention into the social media, or like, destroying the planet, from like fossil fuel technology. But
Yeah.
I do think we'll develop technology that will be more in line with, the health of the planet and with us as individuals. And like, I really, I mean, I hope to do that, like, in the small role that I play in life. Like, um, I hope to contribute to that. But like, we really do need a planetary shift as well. Because like,
Well, and I think that you're doing Vipassana is one of the best things that you could do to accomplish that. It's like it's the same thing with why all of these psychedelics were criminalized. It's for profit. It's like in the same way that if you're designing an app that on one hand connects everyone to everyone else in the world that has access to this application, it's also designed for profit. So that how can we keep you on here staring at this for as long as possible? Like they've started adding ads onto your own profile. So like if you go to like a friend of yours from high school who has like, 8 photos and it's just photo and you're just like scrolling through their photos, on photo 3 it's going to be an ad for fucking shopping. So it's like it's such a cramming in of monetization that the actual like societal benefits are so lost on personal profit.
and like we're so like affluent, especially as a nation at this point. Like, we should we should be able to focus on other things than making more money.
Yeah. And
Dude,
it's
so
go ahead.
okay.
Go.
So you were talking about ads. So the night of day 8 on in the meditation retreat. So I went back to my dorm at 9 p.m. and I was still tripping. And I'm like just laying in bed, just tripping. And I had like these dreams that weren't quite dreams, but they were dreams. And dude, dreams in on Dhamma land are nuts. I've had some
So
so crazy
wild.
dreams. Oh my gosh.
Hyper vivid.
Anyway, yeah, vivid dreams. On that night, I had 2 dreams that were like about the future. And I mean, I don't expect that they'll come true, but like one of them was like I was like on my phone, and then like I noticed like this ad pop up in augmented reality. Like it wasn't on my phone, it was like just like in the room, like a hologram.
Yeah.
And it was like one of my good friends from high school who has since gone to medical school. He's a doctor, and he was like, "Hi Ben, um, you can get good eye contacts from 1-800 contacts, um, and they'll help you. Like you can move your eyes in a certain way, and you'll enter into a meditative state." And like he was like selling me like as like an
Holy
authoritative figure.
shit.
He was a physician. He was selling me as, and also like a good friend of mine, like this these contact lenses.
Which
And
sounds so EMDR slash
yeah,
tracking y.
yeah, like you move your eyes. Like there was this whole ad, and like I I asked, I was like, Nathan, and it was clear to me that it was not actually my friend. It was an AI. It was an artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they were using this company was using his image and voice to like advertise to me.
Deep fake augmented
Deep
reality.
fake AR, best friend doctor, like
Damn. That's yeah, the dreams are so vivid and it feels like in those states, like it feels like you're so subconscious, unconscious, like it all feels like it's so conscious and so like at the forefront more so than usual in a good way. But it's also like, yeah, I mean, some of the dreams that was having was just like immediate confirmation of the experiences that I was having while I was conscious. It
Right.
was, oh, dude, it was so cool.
Yeah. And like it's super important to like pay attention to your dreams. Like we were saying before with the dream I had where my mom took care of me, like I'm like so glad that I had that dream and that I like listened to it eventually. It took
Yeah.
like it's your intuition, like
Yeah.
it's like the deepest part of your like cognitive processing, like speaking to you and like
Yeah.
it, it has good stuff to say.
It does. And it's such a great thing to shift, like write like when you wake up, write down the
Mhm.
dreams that you had instead of going on your phone.
Mhm.
Because I think that that helps you figure out more of what do you believe on a subconscious level.
Mhm.
How do you really feel? You know, you could have a, uh, some dream, whether it's about your mom or, you know, it could be if you're dreaming about trauma, for example, it's generally indicative of like, okay, there's more to heal from, which most of the time there's always more to heal from, including like not even significant trauma or significant in quotes, but like, I mean, like things that might have happened earlier that day or that you then had a dream about that night, or all the way back to what happened with the realtor or the molestation or whatever it is. It's like generally your subconscious is telling you what you believe despite what you may think on a conscious level.
Mhm.
And like what an opportunity that is. Listen to that. And then you get a lot of insight into what beliefs are really running your reality, your core sort of operating system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
pretty trippy. So I guess this takes and then also I remember asking you what snapped you out of the trip.
Yeah. So yeah, after those two dreams, I just had like this itch on my side and I just like scratched it like pretty hard and like that that ended the tripping. Like yeah, I don't know. It was just it was done. And yeah, I mean part of what you learn during these meditation retreats is you're not supposed to scratch the itch. Like if you feel something, like just let it happen. And I guess it could knock you out of a good trip if you do it. So I learned that lesson. But
Yeah. Well, just sort of the aversion. I don't
yeah,
want to feel this itch or a craving for the itch to go away. It's kind of both. But yeah, but at the same time, I also remember you saying that it was like relieving to not be just still tripping on
yeah,
ayahuasca.
yeah, yeah. I thought day nine I would like have like another cool day, but like it was just a normal day of meditating, which is
Yeah.
also fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Wow. That's
man,
so cool. And then day 10 is when we met.
yeah, that was awesome. Just like how late were we up? Like it must have been midnight or something.
It was because we had the clocks went back an hour, so we had an additional hour. So it was late for sure, and we were just pretty ruthlessly chatting about our experiences. That was amazing. And it was
Yeah.
so funny breaking noble silence too, because it's like
Yeah.
it's very mushroomy where everyone's just like smiling and nobody really like quite
Yeah.
knows what to do or say, and it's just
Uh-huh.
like I don't know what's going on, but this feels good, and you're
Yeah.
like feeling the vibrations in your throat as you're speaking.
Yeah. And yeah, you just like it just feels so good to talk.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And yet
And
you're like very aware of the words. You're like, I'm not gonna. I don't feel. There's no like awkward silences. It's just
yeah.
like because silence was what it was for 9 days before that. So it's just a very sort of peaceful, engaged, trippy
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah. It just feels so good.
It does. It was so cool to be able to digest all of these experiences with you and the other guys that we were chatting with. I don't know. Anyone can sign up for these retreats. And it feels like by the end of it, no matter who you are and where you're at in life, you have this incredible sense of like just peace and achievement also. Like it is so hard to do and you get through it, and then you're with all these other people that got through it who were all just in their own vortex of Vipassana, the Vipassana vortex, and it's just like this deep appreciation for these people that you don't know and yet you spent all of this time with, who it feels like you're meeting your meditation team members who you didn't ever speak with, and then everyone's completely different from how you thought they were gonna be, and
Yeah.
It's just an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some really neat people, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that all that it was the experience that it was for you, and that we're talking 2 weeks after now, and it's like holy,
Mhm.
it literally feels like so long ago, and I
Yeah.
think it's because time is warping.
Yeah.
It's again very shroomy, where you kind of forget, like it feels like you said something about the universe accelerating, the creation of the universe like
Yeah.
accelerating.
Like that's the nature of this universe. Like the like galaxies are moving apart from each other at an accelerating pace. Uh, and that's like scientifically what's
Yeah,
happening. Yeah.
yeah, and so it feels like also with the acceleration of technology, something like a 10-day meditation retreat is accelerating in terms of your um, evolution away from worry, evolution away from the part of your mind that feels the need to fight tigers or run away from tigers. It's just
Or freeze in the
evolution of
face,
awareness. What did you say?
or freeze in the face of a tiger.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, I think we'll obviously still have traumatic events in the future. But like I think, each one is an opportunity to like essentially practice, resilience, and like maybe it won't be as difficult to bounce back next time and the time after that. And it's part of life, but
That's a powerful reframe. Opportunities, traumatic experiences are opportunities to grow.
Mhm.
And it's also like what Goenka says, where Vipassana it's a practice for life. This is not for you to just use silently when you're meditating. It's for any moment you're running into sensations and experiences that cause you to have sensations. And in every moment you can remain equanimous and aware. And then you have you get your wings. Then you can fly balanced flight through
Yeah.
life.
Oh, a balanced butterfly
A balanced butterfly.
with each
Yes.
wing, awareness and equanimity.
Yeah, and cocoon free.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, man. I am so grateful that we were rooming together and happened to bump into each other during Noble Silence breaking, and then had this incredible conversation that we were able to pick up on and build on today. And it's just like I am so happy that we met, and your openness and vulnerability. It's like it's amazing, and I'm happy to be your friend, and I'm happy that this experience was so positive for you on the retreat.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also so glad. I feel like we've known each other in a past life.
It totally feels like that.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's so it because when we were talking on the retreat, it was like it literally was like, yeah, so like what's new? It was
Yeah.
like it was so familiar. It's awesome, man. Well, good to see you again.
Yeah,
I don't know how long it's been, but happy to see you again now.
for sure.
Yeah,
And yeah, let's get together soon.
I can't wait. Well, my friend, thank you so much for doing this. It was so fun.
Likewise. Great
Yeah.
way to spend a Saturday. See you soon.
Bye, Ben.
Bye.